All right, so when I began reading the entirety of One Piece last year, so I read it from start to finish, I was reminded of Robin, a character who I thought was really cool because, due to her ability to read the poneglyphs, was basically one of the smartest people within the fictional world of One Piece, and had these powers that were very unique and also deadly. And I've often said that theoretically, if she went up against, let's say, a Marine admiral, if they don't see her, so let's say, I don't know, they're fighting one of the Straw Hats and she's hiding somewhere and she puts her hands together, she might be able to snap their neck without them even being aware that she's attacking them. So, I'm basically saying that this is a character who I think is cool, who I think has a lot of potential within the story. And when I was reading the first half of the series, I was pleasantly feeling good, or rather, I was feeling great about I was pleasantly surprised by her role between Alabasta and Ennis Lobby, because it felt as though each arc was building on her as a character. And I probably would say the only thing I can complain about in her role between those arcs is that she only really has one solo fight, unless you also count the one, I'm referring to the one on Skypiea, but you could also theoretically count her attempting to fight Crocodile when, he betrays her or she betrays him, whichever way you want to look at it. But her role in Thriller Bark was cool to me as well because the stakes were raised due to her soul being stolen, or her shadow being stolen by Gecko Moira, along with Sanji and Zoro's, excuse me. And I like the combo fights that were going on during that arc. So, just everything up until Sabati Archipelago was decent. And in that arc, in that saga, I don't get upset because she's not there. So in this video, you won't see me say, she could have been used in Whole Cake Island because she's not there. So that doesn't count. But over the course of the last, let's say time skip started, and I believe it was 2009, 2010, over the period of the last 10 years, she's kind of been a really disappointing character in terms of her role in the story, and then also what can be expected of her power-wise. So I actually had to go back and write notes because when I read through that, 400 plus chapters, it was really hard to think of anything she did in any arc besides maybe Dressrosa, and even that was a disappointment. Okay, so in Fishman Island, she gets the Joy Boy Poneglyph, and she has a conversation with King Neptune all at the end, where she reveals that Shirahoshi is Poseidon. Now, someone might say to themselves, well, what's the issue with that? Well, if a character's been out of a story, especially a supposed main character, for 70, 80 chapters, I want them to do something. And I want them to, in a battle manga, to have a fight. And I'm actually just going to throw this out there. If Luffy or Zoro or Sanji went as long without a single one-on-one fight as Robin has gone, people would be losing their minds. They would be upset with Oda. They wouldn't hate One Piece, but they would certainly be more critical of it. Because what ends up happening is that Oda will give her a power showcase. So, for example, she uses her powers during Fishman Island, but not in a one-on-one fight. Like assisting type of stuff. People say, "Oh, that's so cool! Robin did this in this episode," and I'm not upset when I see that, but I would like to see a character with very unique abilities be used to use her powers against one foe and have some kind of spotlight. Because when you're assisting another character who's in the middle of a fight or something like that, it's mainly just that character fighting the other person and you being an extension. You're not actually getting focused on. I said before that during the first half of the series, she only has one solo fight. But the reason I'm not upset with that is because she actually gets focused. We get to see her backstory. We get peaks of her personality, this arc where she develops a concern and caring for the Straw Hats to where she basically gives herself up to Ennis Lobby as long as they're allowed to, do whatever they want afterwards. It's it's a characterization that is reflective of actually trying to do something long term with the character. So take Whole Cake Island, for example. The only thing I dislike about that arc in terms of Sanji's character is that he doesn't have a solo fight, because there were so many Big Mom pirates around that I think it's kind of crazy that he couldn't have fought at least one of them by himself for, some continued, like we got Luffy versus Katakuri, but we couldn't get, I don't know, Sanji versus Cracker, or in hell, that was even Luffy versus, we got Luffy versus Cracker too. So what I'm saying is, I would not say that I'm disappointed in his role in that arc, because we get characterization in his part. We get to not only see into his background for the first time, his family. We also get to see him interact with them in the present day. We get to see his feelings about this. It's very, even if other characters are fighting more, he's still the driving point of the story. He still is an individual who the story is trying to center itself around. And that's really what Robin was for the for part one up until Thriller Bark, which is where she began to just decline and decline and decline. But look, her role in Fishman Island, it doesn't break the arc. And I want that to be understood, that this is not a critique or a rebuke of the actual arcs, because the arcs I like. Pretty much, yeah, I like all the arcs in the first half and the second half. In the second half, a little bit less, but, they're fun to me. Punk Hazard, she saves Nami and Chopper from Monet when Monet's attacking them, which is cool. But again, it's a power showcase. And again, I had to go back and read through the arc to see her actually do anything, because I just remember her kind of just standing around and making comments. So she stands around, makes comments, gets to use her powers one time. And I mean, even Tashigi has gotten a one-on-one fight in the New World, which is with Monet. Like, what? That could have easily been Robin's fight. Imagine Monet is using her powers, and she's just doing the Fang stuff. And then as she's trying to attack Robin, she just feels these arms grab her from behind and gets thrown somewhere. But that's why I said Robin has these really cool powers that if they're used, I'll put it like this: if a serious fight were to occur with her, where she gets to use her powers to, break someone's arm and thrash someone around, it would be very unlike a lot of what we've seen. Because the thing about, like, for example, on Dressrosa, I'm not upset that she doesn't get a one-on-one fight with Sugar, because Sugar is similar to Doublefinger from Alabasta, the blue-haired one with the spikes, and that she has an ability that kind of, it doesn't lend itself to a continuous fight. So the narrative kind of is restricted in being allowed to do something like that. So, oh, have a one-on-one with Sugar. She touches you one time, you're a toy. It's a story-breaking power. But when you're looking at someone like Monet, who has this ability that is heightened due to the environment that she's in with the snow and the ice, and you've got a character who can manipulate technically the areas as well in her own kind of way, that could be a very unique setup. And that's something that I really, because Monet was killed off, or at least appears to be deceased, there are some people who like to say she's still alive. The chances of us actually getting that fight are really slim. Even though, again, it could have been a unique circumstance because it's two devil fruit users. And if the Straw Hat, so if Robin had actually won, you would have seen her beat a devil fruit user in an environment that was accustomed to that person, meaning it would have been more impressive, at least conventionally speaking. So maybe somebody would say, that's lame. But again, the point is, the setting also added to it. Yeah, in Dressrosa, And I guess what kills me is that there are people like when I'm gonna probably do a video about that arc and why it's my least favorite arc of the entire series. And I don't hate it or dislike it. It's just it's got problems that are issues for me. But one of the things people said about Dressrosa was that they get rid of half the Straw Hats so they can give focus to the other half. So they get rid of Nami, um, Chopper, Sanji, and Brooke so they can give focus to Zoro, Robin, Frankie, and Usopp. And other than Zoro and Frankie, along with Luffy, obviously. Actually, no, take that back. Other than Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp, I can't really think of anything other than a little brief fight with Senior Pink on Frankie's part that Frankie and Robin really did. Robin gets involved against, so Gladius tries to attack Luffy and she stops him, and somebody will say, oh, that's cool, but again, it's a power showcase. It's not her doing something in particular and having a one-on-one fight with Gladius. And what is so annoying is that everyone has seen, or at least people should be familiar with the fact that Doflamingo has a crew that is not small. And there were plenty of characters that Robin could have been set up to fight against. But for whatever reason, we just get more power showcases. We don't really get to see her have a one-on-one, even though this arc, given it's like a smaller version of Big Mom's crew in the sense that because there's such a larger number of pirates from the antagonist side than the protagonist side of Luffy and the Straw Hats, and then also Bartolomeo and the rest of the Dressrosa crew, it's a lot more ridiculous to me that we don't get at least one-on-one for each Straw Hat. It's kind of like imagine if CP9, instead of one Straw Hat versus one CP9 member, you get Luffy versus, I don't know, 3 of them, and then Zoro versus 2 of them, and Sanji versus 2 of them, and Usopp versus 2 of them. The point is that the story sets itself up in a way to where Robin could have fought one of these people individually, and because of, I'm just going to say, there's a high tendency for female characters in One Piece to basically only ever be able to go all out against other female characters. So that's why you have Nami's what do you call it? Solo fights, solo fights be against Khalifa and Double Finger. But if that's the case, they could have easily, and this is why I said that sometimes it feels like people, when they write these stories, don't really think too far ahead. Let's say that's an unwritten rule of this series, right? We know that Monet was part of that group. So she could have been kept alive and been brought to Dressrosa, and then we could have had her have a second fight and a first fight for Robin in the New World. Let's say she tries to attack Luffy just like Gladius did, and instead of stopping him briefly with her arm, she actually has a one-on-one, all-knuckles brawl with Monet. But she got killed off, so she was left out of an arc where it would have made sense for her to be there. And that's actually made even more ironic because I was told by one person, Oda, he wants to keep certain characters from not getting stale. That's why you only see Smoker one time after the time skip in a major appearance. And, that's why Big Mom is going to disappear after Whole Cake Island. And then right after Whole Cake Island, and we get Zhao, and then we get the current arc of Wano, and she shows up there. So I guess that rule went out the window. But yeah, I didn't put on this little, because I had to take, notes as I mentioned. I didn't put anything for Zhao, and I didn't put anything for Wano because for both of those arcs, she's kind of just been standing around and not really doing anything at all. Like, I know she tried to ear hustle on some conversation early on, and this is why I was saying that a lot of times there are interesting scenarios that they don't really explore in too far of length because they're trying to focus on other people. And I made a joke that we're actually about 971 is coming out on Sunday. We're about 11 or 12 chapters into Odin's flashback. And I made the joke that that a dead character in just 12 chapters has gotten more of a role or a sizable, respectable number of fights and battles than a character who's been in the story for 10 straight years. Basically, I'm saying that his role in those 12 chapters has been more than Robin's role in Wano, Dressrosa, Zhao. Because in Zhao, all she did was stand around, and I guess maybe technically that's all anybody did except for, well, you know, Nami cried about Sanji, and then Zoro got to fight Carrot very brief. You get the point that there's still stuff for certain characters to do. So what they could do if Oda, you know, follows my advice, and I know he won't, because we've got the Beast Pirates and we have the Big Mom Pirates that are going to apparently be in this Yonko alliance that's going to fight the Straw Hats and the Heart Pirates and, you know, everyone that's part of the Kozuki crew. It would be very nice if Robin got to have, if all the Straw Hats actually got to have a solo fight. Let's say this arc goes on for another 50, 60 chapters. There are plenty of characters she could do it against. She could do it against Charlotte Smoothie. Hell, you could bring back Puddin'. You can have her think that Robin is Sanji's actual woman, because, you know, that would actually play off of both the arranged. It would be continuity in two ways, where it's reminding readers of the failed marriage that she had to Sanji, the failed attempt at getting married, and also that Sanji kept making all those, and still does make all these passes toward Robin. So it would line up, I think, pretty perfectly. I gotta say, it's a sad thing, because the other, like her intelligence, right? In a series where you've got a character in Luffy who is not savvy to the world, along with all the other Straw Hats, besides herself, it's almost as though this. So I have this thing where I like Boo from Dragon Ball, and he has power to turn people into candy, all these abilities that people deem to be power breakers. And I said that a good writer who's trying to use a character will find a way to get around that character's story-breaking abilities. So, you know, if you don't want him to turn people into candy, you can have him fight a villain who's resistant to that power, and then explain it through some reasoning, like, oh, he encountered this ability before and now he can, you know, whatever this new character's name is, be immune to it for after years of making themselves immune to it because of something that they injected. Just a good writer finds a way to work around the limitations they set on themselves. But if they want, if Oda wanted Robin to give her knowledge without spoiling things for the Straw Hats, he would do, and I know this would never happen, some kind of like story for her where she's separate from the Straw Hats and she's on her own. And then maybe in that, I don't know, let's say it's 50 or 100 chapters, just some number you could throw out there, like Marineford length. So that whole Summit War saga, you could have the Straw Hats doing something else, and then she's going around reading all these poneglyphs, and while she's doing this, she's encountering different villains who she can have her one-on-one fights with, which would take away my criticism that she hasn't had any fights so far in the time skip. You know, after arcs and arcs and arcs, and also allow her to give off her knowledge and show her knowledge without imparting it to the Straw Hats, because it's meant to be a surprise to those characters. But instead, we're treated to Oda basically having her inexplicitly shut up. So, you know, she just won't say anything. Like, so many things have just been kind of annoying because of that, such as with Sabo, like, oh, your brother was part of the Revolutionary Army and I knew about it, but I didn't tell you because reasons. So she's a great character, in my opinion. I make these criticisms not as a critic of One Piece, but as someone that really likes it and that thinks the story would be benefited from one of the, in my opinion, better members of the Straw Hats getting some more stuff to do. So I've given some examples of what can be done with her. I have criticized her role in the story in the second half, which is why this is called Robin is Wasted in the New World. But I'm still going to read it. I still enjoy the series. I just wish that a character I really like would get some shine. So thank you for watching. Have a good day.